Well, aren't you a regular Nancy Drew?
I learned that from the Nancy Drew detective.
Okay, go.
You think you can follow the clues and solve the case of the missing condiment, Nancy Drew?
Because I've read every Nancy Drew mystery ever written.
Nancy, please tell me you're joking.
Wow, you suck at this Nancy Drew stuff. You should get a new hobby.
My name is Carson Drew, and this is my assistant, Nancy.
Nancy Drew.
It's curtains for you, Miss Drew.
Nancy Drew strikes again.
A regular Nancy Drew.
Well, hello, regular Drews.
Hello, everyone.
We are back again with another episode. This one is 115. So this is a little bit of a special episode for us because we are wrapping up one of our sections here from comparing the original text to the revised text. Before we actually get into the topic today, we decided we wanted to start doing something a little bit kind of fun in these, every fifth episode, to kind of wrap up these sections.
Mm-hmm.
And because Kori, you saw a post on Reddit that gave you this idea.
Yes.
So thank you to Vicious Salmon on the Nancy Drew subreddit for bringing this up. And we're just going to borrow that idea.
Yes. So it's kind of, the concept is kind of like Kiss, Marry, Kill, but instead it's going to be with our books instead. So we've decided that our categories, and we've added a fourth category just because we're going to be doing 4 books here. But one is keep, one is delete, one is give away, and one is revise.
Mm-hmm.
So we have to decide which of these books we love so much we'd want to keep it for ourselves, which one we'd like, and it's a good book, but maybe it's just not our style, and so we'd give it away to someone, which one we would delete entirely of the list, and then which one we like, but we would make some tweaks and revise it.
Right. I was just looking at this list of these last episodes that we've done. So it's Clue of the Velvet Mask, I should say, Quest of the Missing Map, Mystery of the Moss-Covered Mansion, and The Bungalow Mystery. And I'm already struggling.
I know. I was like, I already don't like this.
Hard.
It's going to be a hard choice. Okay.
Yeah. I think, so delete, I think delete is the easiest one for me.
Yeah.
Right? Like, which one out of this list do I think we can get rid of? And I think, sadly, this is sad, actually. I don't know. But I my gut is Quest of the Missing Map. I'm going to delete Quest of the Missing Map.
Yeah, that's fair. I think I would probably delete that one as well.
I think it's the worst one.
Yeah.
Out of these.
Mm-hmm.
Now, do I think there's an argument for revising and that it would be good? Yes, but I think the level of revision would be a lot. Mm-hmm. And so it's probably better to just delete. Okay.
This one's extra hard because, of course, Moss-Covered Mansion, we do have very different original and revised text.
Right.
I would almost choose this one as my revision, take the original and re-revise it into something that wasn't as racist, but also not as insane as Exploding Oranges.
Right.
I don't know. That's kind of a weird middle ground, though, because it's already been revised so drastically.
I think I agree with that, too. Yeah, I think probably, I didn't read the original text, so I can't really talk about that one. But I think in both situations, original text from what you've told me and revised text, I think you could revise them both in a way that would make them really great stories because they're pretty entertaining.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
And I had a good time reading Mystery of the Moss-Covered Mansion. There was just stuff that just didn't make sense.
Yeah.
And of course, like in the original text, like you were talking about, there's racism. So yeah, got to get rid of that.
There's enough elements of both of them with the animals and the Moss-Covered Mansion that you could almost even merge the stories. Just take the best elements of the two and then revise it into something that leaves out the worst parts of both of them.
Right. The one thing we've got to keep is the sausage tree, though.
Yes, of course.
And I think my keep, the one that I like the most, is gonna be the Bungalow Mystery.
Oh, I was gonna say the same. Yeah. And then Velvet Mask was great, but just give it away.
Yeah, I liked Velvet Mask, but like I don't love it, and I think give it away to somebody else who's gonna appreciate it more than me. So yeah.
Okay, that was easier than I thought it was going to be.
That was easier, and we're on the same page with that, so that's really helpful. But so cool. Okay.
Well, that was fun. Thank you.
Yes.
What was their name? Something
Vicious Salmon.
Vicious Salmon. Thank you, Vicious Salmon. That was a very creative little thing to do there. It was fun.
Yeah, and so hopefully we'll continue to do that on every 5th episode moving forward, just as a way to wrap it up, But of course, that's not the only reason why we are here. We are also here today to talk about Nancy Drew, Troubleshooter. This is the 3rd Bonita Granville movie from the 30s. So, oh my gosh. I have so much to say about it.
Yes.
Oh, Kori, I hated it.
Really? Yeah.
I hate it.
It's been so long since we've seen any of these.
Yeah.
I didn't hate it. Honestly, it might be, I don't know if it's my favorite of the 4.
Yeah.
I like it more than I liked the first one, Detective, I think.
Okay. I think, here's the thing here's my opinion. I think it's a good movie.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's a really interesting movie. There's a lot, of course, I don't like about it. It is incredibly racist.
Oh, well, yeah.
To the point where, I was so distracted, I could barely think about anything else.
Mm-hmm.
But it's just not a Nancy Drew movie. It's like an antithesis to a Nancy Drew movie. Like, the way that they characterize Nancy, every step of the way, I don't see Nancy. And I think Bonita Granville is great. I think she's a great actress. And I think that the chemistry that she has with Frankie Thomas is great. And I think it's funny. I think it's, well, actually, I kind of have an issue with the comedy, but I think the writing is good. I think the scene structure is good and everything. I think it's a good movie, but it's just not. It makes me so angry because I'm like, how dare you put the name of Nancy Drew on this?
Yeah,
and so that's why I hate it.
It was so interesting, especially after having read the older books, the original text from the 30s right before we did this, to kind of get some perspective on, what it would have been like as a little girl if we'd been born in the 20s, grown up with this depiction of Nancy. I think obviously it would have been a little different. It almost reminds me of old greeting cards, before holidays really got a sense of what the theme and aesthetic of that holiday would be, and not necessarily even a specific holiday, but just because let's back up here. This movie came out in 1939, and so at the time only the first 16 books had been published, and so when you have so little to go off of, it's hard to know exactly what direction to take the characterization, if that makes sense.
I guess, but 16 still feels like a lot to me.
It does, absolutely. But I mean, and I brought up the greeting card thing to think of, if you see old Halloween cards, there'll be a random goose on there, and it's Halloween it hadn't really settled to the point where we associate pumpkins and specific specific things with that holiday. We don't really associate the characteristics that we think of with Nancy today. They hadn't really been solidified as well back then, so there was a lot more room to take it and be like, oh, we think Nancy Drew is going to be more of the brat character. And actually they specifically told Bonita Granville to play her up as this bratty character, because there really wasn't a lot in the books to say, oh, this isn't Nancy just yet,
It's not even the brat characterization that makes me so angry, though. It's the fact that Nancy is stupid.
Oh, well, that too. Yeah, not just the bratty part, but there's a lot of her personality that's that wouldn't have stayed, they would never have kept that if they'd remade the same movie today. Well, we wouldn't have the same plot. But.
I mean, granted, I have probably not read enough of the original text versions of Nancy Drew books to say this for sure, but I still feel like even reading, original text Hidden Staircase, which I think is one of the ones that I've read, or, Old Clock, I've read original text of that. Even reading those, I don't see how you can get this Nancy Drew from that.
Well, and then they step away even further, because for the movie they have to turn her into a comedy thing,
right?
Because they're trying to play into that genre a little bit more and not sticking as much to the book characterization. Yeah,
it's definitely a Hollywoodization, I guess.
Of course.
Is that the word? Is that the term? And so I understand that, and I understand that everything is going to be turned up on the dial to a 10. But it it makes me so mad. And I feel like it's just the wrong direction. And as entertaining as the movies can be, I can't watch them and see Nancy Drew.
Yeah.
You know? Yeah. So
it's it's nothing like the CW show, but it's almost that same grain of salt to enjoy it, to really like sink your teeth into it. You have to step away just a little bit and say, I know going into this is not going to be exactly book Nancy that I expect.
Well, and also, like you were saying, like, you know, we weren't born at the time for like these to be marketed to us, obviously. Like these are not intended to appease us, right? It is a very different type of girl probably. And so yeah, I can't complain too much about that, but like obviously my opinion's all I've got.
Yeah.
So it's all I can talk about, you know. But yeah, I get it, and I get what you're saying. But yeah, it's I don't like it.
Yeah, not that I'm defending any of it with what I've said here, but it just, you know, because of all those things, it makes you think about it from a different perspective.
Yeah, for sure. Well, so like we said, this came out in 1939. It was directed by William Clemens, as were all the rest of them. Screenplay by Kenneth Garnett or Gamet. I'm not sure. I never know how to say his name. And of course stars Bonita Granville and Frankie Thomas as Ted, or Bonita Granville as Nancy, Frankie Thomas as Ted, aka or Ned, our Ned character, and then John Little as Carson. So, and getting down into it. Sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say, should we do our fun facts really quick with the original working title?
Yes.
So I think that we did mention this in our History of Nancy Drew adaptations episode that we did, almost 2-3 years ago at this point, 2.5 years ago. But I'll just reiterate them now. Originally, this movie did have the working title of Nancy Drew Steps Out. And they did originally want to base this one off of the book The Haunted Bridge, because that was the most recent book at the time when this movie was coming out. But eventually they just decided to go with an original storyline instead. So this one's not based off of a book.
See, that's another thing that irritates me, is I just feel like at every step of the way they made the wrong choice. And because we talked about this when we covered The Haunted Bridge, it's such a good story. And when we did the episode, we were like, gosh, it would be so great to have an adaptation of this.
Right.
And so I'm like, why would they not choose to do that and then choose to like put out this weird story where Nancy is like super emotional and not paying attention and clumsy and, you know, all of this stuff. And just like the story isn't even really a mystery to us, because like at the beginning we know exactly what is happening, like every step of the way. And just when you could have like an actual kind of like spooky golf mystery, like why? But also, Steps Out, terrible.
Yeah, what does that mean? All of these titles are not super great, but that's really bad.
Yes. Yeah. So, yeah. I mean, I think in retrospect, I am kind of glad that they didn't do an adaptation of Haunted Bridge, because I feel like it would have been disastrous too, probably. And so I'm glad that that's been ruined for me.
Maybe it would have been better, because the Larkspur Lane adaptation was still a good,
That's
mostly
true.
faithful adaptation.
That's true.
Hidden Staircase, they changed they changed a good
Some
amount
of
with
it.
Hidden Staircase, but yeah.
But the story, you're right. Yeah, it would have been better.
Maybe.
So, I think after the second one, have we watched the last one? What's the last one?
Hidden Staircase. The only one we haven't seen now is the second one, which is Reporter.
Right. Which I've seen before, but we haven't covered it. Yeah, no, I feel like this is definitely the worst one out of all the ones that I've seen. I know you like it better, but I don't.
Yeah. That's okay. Fun fact, though, Bonita said that this one was her favorite of the 4 that she filmed.
Interesting.
So.
To film? Her favorite to film?
Yeah. Which, I mean, that plane scene at the end, honestly, the ending is so exciting that I could understand why it would be like a more fun one to film. So
yeah, the stunts and everything. Yeah, I can see that. But, anyway. Okay, so my beef with this movie is that I think that the comedy's kind of lacking compared to the other ones.
The comedy's terrible.
Because it seems to like mostly be down to slapstick humor, which is par for the course for these. So I don't blame them that so much. But it's either that or it's racist jokes.
Yeah.
There's really no Nancy like running circles around anyone in a way that's funny. There's no there's no like smart comedy. There's no comedy that, relies on you like understanding what Nancy's doing or understanding what's happening in the mystery. None of that. And then my second issue is that there really is no mystery here, at least for the viewer, because we pretty much not entirely at the start, but pretty soon after the start, we know exactly who is responsible for the mystery. We see the bad guys doing their scheming like right in front of us. So it's like, okay, I mean, there's nothing to figure out. Mm-hmm. And also one of the main plot points is Carson being attracted to a woman, and Nancy like hating it and every step of the way. And I can't stand this plot line. I hate it because I do think it could be interesting to see Carson kind of falling for another woman and Nancy like responding to that. But at its core, and we've talked about this with these movies before, at its core, I do not like the way they represent Carson and Nancy's relationship in this. No. And this is like the worst offender in that, because Carson basically treats Nancy like child, doesn't listen to her, like writes her off. She is super bratty and like really like emotional in a way that where like she's not even like paying attention to like what it is that she's doing or like what's even going on. She's just solely focused on this like one issue. And I understand there's a level of single-mindedness in there that is reminiscent of a lot of the original text Nancy's, but it's just overall the way that she and Carson interact in this is just so difficult to watch.
We need a Nancy Drew movie that is just truly set in the mystery genre and is not also trying to be like, look, we're a fun kids movie, and also we're a comedy of like, oh, we've taken the Nancy that you know and love and we've made her into this brat. Or it's 2007 now and we've taken Emma Roberts and we've made her into an outcast because she's this way. And
or the Sophia Lillis movie where it's like we're really watering down everything because because it's trying to be a kids movie and we have to have a message about bullying and all this stuff, when really it's like not showcasing Nancy Drew really at all. So,
and I get that our target audience is children, but you can still talk to children and show content to children without talking down to them and being like, oh, this is what you want, this dumb stuff, isn't it? Right.
And I think the Nancy Drew Diaries, I know we're not talking about the Nancy Drew Diaries right now, but I think the Nancy Drew Diaries are the exact answer to that. Like, they do exactly that. They are writing a book for children without talking down to children. And anyway, but I won't get on my Nancy Drew Diaries podium right now. So the other thing that irritates me about this movie is that Nancy relies on Ted a lot more than like, she's not really investigating anything. She like makes Ted do it pretty much. Like she makes or Ted is like the one who ends up being like brave and smart, and Nancy is like just kind of like brash and clumsy and emotional. And it just really irritates the fire out of me. So
3 words?
I was like, I don't even know that I have anything like positive to say about it off the bat, which kind of sucks. I think Bonita Granville does a great job. That's all I'll say, I guess. Bonita Granville's great, and I love Bonita Granville. I just don't like the movie.
The characterization is definitely different than you'd expect, and I think it's a lot more extreme than the first two in this series. So
okay,
but
3 words:
flowers, plants,
definitely
greenhouses.
Flowers. Gotta be flowers. I think racism also needs to be one of the 3 words because it is throughout the movie. It's very intense. And I mean, like, just be warned if you're going to watch this movie that, I mean, in my opinion, that's the bulk of the movie is a racist portrayal. And we'll talk a lot about the character of Apollo, I'm sure, once we get into it. So
is this the first time we have a character of color in the Bonita Granville movies? I'm trying to remember the first two. It's just been so long. I don't remember.
I think there's Asian representation in, because they go to a Chinese restaurant, don't they? Is it Nancy Drew Reporter?
Oh, that's right. That's right. I forgot about that. And they sing.
And it's very racist as well.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. I think that's the only thing that's coming to mind.
Yeah. So not great. Not a great track record.
No. And I understand it was the 30s. I don't want anyone to think that I wouldn't expect race. Of course, it's racist. It was from the 30s, but also, like, we need to talk about that still.
Of course.
Because it's just not okay. And it colors my entire watching of the movie, so I can't not talk about it. So.
Just because it was common and socially acceptable doesn't mean that it was okay, So
right.
Definitely worth discussing.
Yeah. And then I think this one is a toss-up for me. I think it should either be Planes or Mommy Issues.
That's such a hard choice.
I know.
Yeah. The plane is a really important part, and it's probably the best part of the movie.
It's true. So let's make it Planes.
But the mommy issues is more like prescient, It's a bigger deal. And it's Carson and Ted that have these mommy issues.
And Nancy.
And Nancy. Too bad they cut the kissing scene. It's like kissing.
Oh, yeah, that's right. You told me about
the
this
kissing
before.
scene. We have to, at the end, let's speculate about where we think it takes place in the movie.
Oh, I think I know where it takes place.
You think so?
Oh, yeah.
At the end?
No.
At the ice cream social?
Yeah, the ice cream social.
I think she's wearing that same dress in the picture. So I figured it's the ice cream social.
It's got to be the ice cream social.
But when at the ice cream social?
I think it happens right before he proposes.
Okay.
Because when we nobody's gonna know what we're talking about. There's a point where, like, we kind of just cut to Carson, and he's asked her something, and it's clear that he's asked her to marry him, but we don't actually see him asking her that. And so my assumption is there's a scene right before that where they're overcome with passion or whatever, they kiss, and he's like, "Edna, will you marry me?" And she's like, "We need to go talk about this." And then they go and sit on the swing.
But when Nancy and Ted kiss, though.
Oh wait, I thought it was Carson and the lady kissing.
They might kiss, but the Nancy Ted kiss got cut from the movie.
Right.
Remember that old picture? I can send you the link if you want.
No, I remember. Let
me pull up the photo because I'm curious about what dress she was wearing.
That doesn't make any sense then. I don't know when that happened. Is it on the boat? Is it at the end?
It's indoors. I can see, like, the wall at a sconce behind them. It looks like they're inside somebody's house.
Huh.
And it looks... I'd have to double check. That looks like the dress she wore to the ice cream social. And he's in a suit.
So that would make sense.
Right. Because I don't think he wears a suit except for when they go to that.
Maybe they go inside. Because the only other interior set, or I guess there's a couple, but the only real interior set of, like, a house where there would be a sconce is Nancy's, like, their little cabin. Or whatever that they're staying in, their little bungalow.
It doesn't look like the Drew home. It doesn't look like the very star when she's packing or whatever.
And I'm sure it doesn't look like the inside of, like, the flower shop or, like, the barn is the only other really one. So, like, yeah, I bet it would have to be a different set. And I'm guessing it's probably the interior of whatever person's house they're at for that ice cream social, because it's pretty fancy. A fancy place.
That makes sense.
Yeah, but why
would they be kissing? Because the whole time she's there, she's pouting about Carson. I can't imagine it would turn to, romance.
And
with
Ted is he hates every second he spends with her.
And he's interested in the other woman anyway.
Right.
So
I can't imagine he's feeling amorous. Yeah, no, that's wild. It's wild. Yeah. I mean, my thought is, like, maybe it could be, like, if Carson was gonna go tell Nancy that he just proposed to her, and it was maybe, like, a cut kind of like reason, but, like, then he decides he's not gonna tell her right now because she's making out with Ted. But it's not
That
as
doesn't
strong.
really make sense.
No,
Yeah.
it's not as strong as like her talking to Ted and telling him that she is going to run away if he marries this woman. It's a better reason to not marry her. Okay, so shall we jump in, Kori?
Let's do it. Yes.
Okay, so the movie opens with a shot of a small downtown, and there's like this hubbub going on. Apparently, someone named Matt Brandon has just been arrested for murdering his neighbor, Mr. Clark, but Mr. Clark's body is like missing. So we don't actually have a corpse. We don't have anyone who's been murdered. We just think he's been murdered. Think that this guy did it. Matt is currently being interrogated at the sheriff's department, and he claims to not have done anything, but lots of people apparently heard Matt threatening to kill this missing guy the day that he went missing. So Matt lawyers up, and he writes a letter to none other than Carson Drew. And then we jump to the Drew residence, and we see Carson reading this letter. He calls Effie into the room. This is their maid, who is actually, I guess, Hannah's niece in the books, but she is kind of playing the Hannah character in these movies. And she comes into the room, and he tells her to pack. And it's a funny scene because she actually thinks that he's firing her, but he's like, no, we're all going to go to the country because my old friend Matt Brandon is in trouble up in Sylvan Lake where he lives. So he's going to pack up the family to go help him. But he does know that if Nancy finds out about this, this trouble that Matt's under investigation for murder, that she's going to try to get involved and get herself in trouble somehow. So he tells Effie to keep it a secret. But then obviously Nancy returns home. She is back from the flower show that she won second prize in. And Carson is in the living room getting like his hunting gear together or whatever. And he announces to Nancy that they are going on vacation. And Carson just tells Nancy that their Uncle Matt, I guess this is an affectionate title for him. He's just an old family friend who I guess is Nancy knows of, has invited them up to his farm. And they may be gone all summer. He doesn't know how long they're going to be gone. And Nancy is kind of like incredulous about this because Carson apparently has never been like an outdoorsy kind of guy. And Carson just kind of like brushes past that and says, oh, really? I thought this idea would appeal to you because Ted is actually up at the lake right now with his family. And don't you want to see him? But Nancy smells a rat with all of this. She's like, this doesn't make sense. I don't believe you. You're trying to pull something over on me. So when Carson goes off to look for his fishing rod, Nancy looks at the stuff that Carson is packing. She sees his briefcase and she's like, okay. So she coyly says to Effie that if they're headed on vacation, then her dad shouldn't need his briefcase. So she's just going to go take it and put it away. And actually, she's going to hide it because he doesn't even need to be thinking about work right now. And Effie, of course, knows the real reason they're going and knows that Carson does need that. And so she's trying to pull it back from Nancy and be like, oh, no. I'm sure he's just going to do a little bit of work. And eventually, Nancy like weasels it out of Effie, the real reason that they are going. And of course, as soon as she knows that Uncle Matt's in trouble and Carson's returned at this point, that she's like, come on, hurry up, Dad. Uncle Matt's in a jam and I've got to help him out. And so that is how we start our journey up to Sylvan Lake.
That's probably the funniest scene in the whole movie, I think.
Yeah, honestly, it is. Also because, like, at one point, Carson shoots the rifle into the ceiling. There's really bad gun etiquette happening. And, like, just the whole, like, family dynamics of this. Even though I think this is the start of me hating the portrayal of the relationship between Carson and Nancy in this, because he's trying to lie to her because he thinks that she's going to get herself into trouble, and he basically thinks that she's not competent or trustworthy, and she in turn doesn't trust him, and is kind of just like also really rude to Effie. Both of them are all the time because she's just hired help and it doesn't matter what she thinks, and they make fun of her for constantly being worried about her job security and like her health and all of this stuff, and things that are perfectly acceptable to be worried about and concerned about. And so it's funny, but I hate it.
Poor Effie. Well, the poison ivy thing is worse, I think. But
Yes.
yeah, we'll get there in a second.
Yeah.
Anyway, we get to the farm and we meet Apollo Johnson, a worker there, and he is currently setting up a trap to catch chicken, which is hilarious to everyone for some reason. Carson says that he likes Apollo's name, and Nancy makes fun of him for I don't know. She thinks that
really
this is
confusing as to what the comedy is supposed to be here. Like, literally, they come up, they're like, "Oh, what's your name?" He says, "I'm Apollo Johnson." And Carson's like, "Oh, what a beautiful name." And Apollo goes, "Yes, I think so." And then they just laugh. And like Carson and Nancy laugh and they walk away and they enter into the house and Nancy goes, "Oh, Apollo, what a character." And Carson goes, "Yes, he'll be a huge help." What?
Okay.
Basically, so they're just thinking that anything he says is funny because, of course, they can't take him seriously because he's black.
Well, yeah, of course.
Right. So.
Also, where are we? Is this just a place that they've rented for the summer, or is this like Uncle Matt's summer house or something?
I think it's a house owned by Uncle Matt. My assumption is that it's another house like on his property.
Okay.
Like a guest house or something like that they are staying on.
That makes sense.
It could also be Matt's house itself, but it's unclear.
It seemed like he owned it, but that he didn't live there. But then when he gets out of jail later, we see him there. So I was confused if he did live there or not. But
yeah.
But anyway, so we're at this cottage and we go inside now and they start remarking on how sparse everything is. Like, I guess maybe Uncle Matt obviously was not prepared for them to visit, didn't know that they'd be coming, so didn't have time to prepare for them. But there's like no curtains on the windows. There's like barely any furniture. Carson does sit in this old chair, it breaks. So he gets really grumpy and is like, well, obviously we're not staying here. But then we meet Miss Edna Gregory. She's a very, very beautiful. And Carson is just like absolutely awestruck by her. Just as soon as she walks in, his attitude changes immediately. And it's like, oh, this is going to be the perfect place to stay. And then Apollo is directed by Edna to come in and hang up curtains inside the house. And
this is so crazy to me. This is so confusing to me. So like Apollo is clearly supposed to be like a servant or something on this property. I guess employed, quote unquote, I hope, by Matt Brandon, but everyone just treats him like their own personal servant.
Right, because who is this woman? Like, what right does she have to just come over and start bossing him around?
And he just complies because, of course, he has to, because if he didn't, his life would be in danger. But like, yeah. It's so racist, you guys. It's so racist.
It really doesn't even make sense. But yeah, she starts bossing him around and gets curtains hung up for them or whatever. Yeah. So apparently Edna was the one that was supposed to set up this house for them, but just hasn't had time to do it. So whatever, now she's going to do it now. But then they start talking about Matt and the case and everything. And Edna explains that they're only suspicious of him for Clark's murder because they had both constantly argued about the boundary of their shared property line. And then one day, about a month ago, Clark just disappeared and Apollo chimes in. He thinks that the Haints took him. He, in fact, claims to have seen these Haints. Apparently, there's a tall one and a short one, and one of them exploded. Okay, that's a lead, I guess. And then Edna is very dismissive of this, and Nancy even is like, there's no such thing as ghosts. What are you talking about? And they just brush him off as being childlike, I guess. Right. Carson says, okay, well, let's deal with this Matt situation. I'm going to get him, bring him back within the hour. And Nancy has started to notice that Carson is clearly very attracted to Edna. And she decides that she is going to go with Carson to the sheriff's office, I guess, because Carson can't be left unattended because he might start flirting with this woman if Nancy is not there with him. When we get to the sheriff's office, we meet Mr. Griffith, who was Clark's partner. And Carson asks the sheriff if they found Clark's body, and the sheriff says no. And Carson explains to the sheriff, who is portrayed as very dumb, very bumbling cop. And he explains to them, well, if there's no evidence that a crime's been committed, then you can't hold Matt. And Nancy pulls out the old corpus delicti, and they get that settled, and Matt is released from jail. Then that evening, Nancy goes to meet Ted at his, I guess, parents' lake house, where he's actually building a boat right now and is very annoyed to see Nancy. She tries to get him to join him for dinner, but he's not super excited to accept this and tries to like get her to leave almost. But then she gives him a watch. She's like, oh, by the way, I have a present for you. And it's this beautiful watch. And he accepts it. And it's like, oh, well, now that I've accepted this watch, I kind of have to go to dinner with you tonight, don't I? But yeah, so basically after the watch thing, she starts telling me, it's like, well, I'm really worried about my dad. And if, Carson is like after this person, and if you were there, then, you could maybe be like a mediator or something in this situation. You can see what I'm talking about if you come to dinner tonight. And then maybe we can come up with like a plan for getting this siren away from Carson.
Yeah. So back at the cottage, Nancy finds that Effie has had an encounter with poison ivy, and she is being tended to by Matt and Carson. They're like rubbing like cream like all over her arms and her face. It's a really weird scene, actually. It's kind of creepy to me.
It's so sad, and it's supposed to be like funny that she's miserable.
Yes.
Like that's the joke.
Yeah, that's just that she's in pain and she doesn't like being in the country. She even says, quote unquote, that she wishes they would give the country back to the Indians.
Great idea, Effie.
But so Effie is out of commission, and Nancy says that, okay, well, she'll make dinner, because they're going to have this celebratory dinner. And she didn't take, what did she say? She didn't take like home economics for nothing or something, or whatever. And and then Matt suggests enlisting Edna for help because Edna's a really good cook. And Nancy is like, absolutely not. I can do it all by myself. But unfortunately, cut to the next scene, it is clear that Nancy cannot do it by herself. She is struggling. It is like this whole comedy of errors in the kitchen. She like drops boiling water on the floor with the potatoes, and it's a whole thing.
It's a little funny.
It
to
is
be fair.
funny.
Dropping the potatoes is a little funny. But...
It's a little funny. And Ted comes by and he starts to help Nancy because she makes him. And then Edna comes by and she's brought a cake and she's very nice, and much to Nancy's frustration also jumps in to help and proves to be very competent in the kitchen. So Nancy's really annoyed by this, and also because Ted is like, once he meets Edna, he becomes moonstruck and enamored with her as well. And she's like, you're supposed to be on my side in all of this, and now you're acting ridiculous too. And so she tells Ted to go out and get Carson and to bring him in here so she can talk to him. But when Carson comes in, he starts helping Edna and then kicks Ted and Nancy out of the kitchen so that he can be alone in the kitchen with Edna. So they like go out on the premise of like picking watercress for the salad or whatever. But basically they just go on a walk and Nancy is like picking flowers or whatever, and she's frustrated with him and she calls him a traitor for being silly about this woman too. And they're walking and they walk across this field where Nancy notices this particularly beautiful flower that she recognizes as an arbensis. Okay. An arbensis is not a real kind of flower, and I know it's arbensis because I saw it written. They show it written at a certain point in the movie. But there is a real flower called an arvensis.
Oh, they probably just mixed them up for the movie.
I think they were just making a made up flower that's supposed to be an arvensis. But the arvensis flower is actually commonly known as the scarlet pimpernel. Okay, and that was a very popular novel at the time. Mm-hmm. And so I'm like, well, is this supposed to be like some kind of reference to the Scarlet Pimpernel? But I can't really see how, because I mean, like the plot of the Scarlet Pimpernel is just that like there's this like guy who is like basically is like this alter ego as the Scarlet Pimpernel, and he's like this suave kind of like Casanova type of character. And I'm like, I don't really understand how that relates. Yeah. I don't know. Maybe it's an inside joke or something. Whatever.
Maybe.
She finds this flower in this field, but this flower is really rare. And she's like, how did it get here? Like, did someone drop a seed or whatever? So she just makes a note of it. She actually puts a marker down and she plans to come dig it up and pot it later because it's not native to this area. So she wants to like, I guess, take it out of here. Whatever. So they go back to the house. At this point, Apollo hides a cooked chicken behind his back, like under his shirt. But he has just pulled it off the fire that he cooked it on, so it's still really hot. And so when Nancy starts talking to him and asking him to, again, ordering him around and saying, hey, go get that flour that I marked, put it in a pot. He's like twitching from pain and because he's being burned by this hot chicken. And Nancy's like, what's wrong with you? And he's like, oh, I'm just practicing the jitterbug. So this is just clearly such a racist situation because they're just basically portraying Apollo as being stupid and like, I guess, really like, is he supposed to be stealing the chicken? Is that why he's hiding it?
That's the thing. Why did he feel like he needs to hide the fact that he's having dinner?
My thought is, my assumption is that he doesn't own these chickens.
Right.
And so he, even before when he was catching one,
he wasn't supposed to
He
be.
wasn't supposed to be. And he hid it behind his back then too. And so now that he's cooked the chicken, he hides it behind his back again. And so it's like, okay, so not only are we supposed to think he's stupid, we're also supposed to think he's a thief and a liar. And it's just so funny. It's just so funny.
Yeah.
Like, it's so gross. It's so irritating. It's so disgusting. I can't. Anyway.
Well, and Nancy doesn't notice that this is going on. She just buys the jitterbug remark, but Ted notices the pile of feathers on the ground. And after Nancy walks away, he's like, you can eat that chicken before you go dig up the flour, right?
Yeah.
And it's like, was that supposed to be funny? Like,
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Just let the man eat his dinner. What are you talking about?
Yeah. Oh yeah. So yeah, no, it's interesting too, because after, like, when everyone's eating dinner, we see Apollo going to the field to go dig up the flour for Nancy, and he's like muttering the whole way. He's talking about how he's tired of people asking him like to work, and he like fantasized about winning millions of dollars. And so it's clear that like he's very put upon and he's very unhappy, but like we're just supposed to view it as him being silly and petulant and like a child, like childlike. And so it's just such a racist portrayal because this is an adult man. So
getting permission from a 16-year-old boy to eat his dinner.
Being bossed around by a 16-year-old, having to do things for people who don't employ him, not getting paid enough, not being allowed to eat food or like, profit off of his own effort, because I'm sure he's keeping those chickens right in front of his house. So presumably he cares for them. So like, yeah. So anyway, so Apollo digs up this flower and then notices something buried underneath it when he does. And then he screams and he runs to the sheriff, and he tells the sheriff that he has found a body buried on Mr. Brandon's property. He didn't look to see who it was. He just came here right away because he was so terrified. So the sheriff and everyone head over to the farm, and then we cut to the next scene. We see the sheriff and his posse or whatever come into the cottage where everyone is having dinner, and they arrest Matt again. They say that the body they found was Clark, and now that they have found him buried on Matt's land, that's proof that he's the one who murdered him. So they cart him off, and Nancy is upset, and she thinks that it's her fault for asking Apollo to dig up the flower, and she wants to do something, but Carson tells her that this is a murder case, and she needs to stay out of it. But Nancy promises, but keeps her fingers crossed when she says that. So
the next day, Edna stops by the cottage and says, "Oh, Nancy, I'm going to this ice cream social tonight. I would love it if you came with me." And Nancy's like, "I don't want to go to something with you." And she's like, "Oh, well, you can bring your boyfriend Ted, because otherwise you'll be all alone tonight because your dad's going with me." And Nancy's like... As soon as she hears this, she's like, "Well, of course I'm going to be there so that I can chaperone the two of you."
Right.
Doesn't say that, obviously. But then Nancy gets kind of annoyed because Edna and Carson leave to go see Matt in jail, but then they're also going to go shopping for something for him to wear tonight. And Nancy is, of course, even more angry because now they are so familiar. They are calling each other by their first names. Big no-no. She calls Ted a traitor at this point, too, for not doing more to help her. And he tells her that she's being a little intense about this whole thing.
You think?
Yeah. But then Nancy has an idea. She asks Apollo, who's kind of nearby, if there's any greenhouses in the area. We get another joke here because Apollo thinks that we mean literal houses that are painted green and not like a plant greenhouse nursery type thing. He's like, no, most people around here have their house painted white, not green. But then he's like, yeah, no, if you're talking about nurseries, there's one in town, actually. So she and Ted head over to this nursery, and Nancy thinks that the plant that we found in the field couldn't have got to that spot, obviously, without having been planted there because it's not native to the area. And why would someone plant like a whole flower just in the randomly in the middle of a field? They wouldn't. We think that the plant is probably about 4 weeks old, just based on the size of it. And Mr. Clark disappeared about a month ago, right? So it seems more likely that it was like probably a seed in somebody's pocket that fell out when they were burying Clark. And so the seed just happened to fall on top of his body and has been growing there since then.
Right.
So Nancy decides that she needs to find out who nearby in town might have access to these arbensis seeds. So we get to the Sylvan Lake Nursery, and the salesman there points out a man named Mr. Griffith. And he's like, we don't sell any plants like that, but Mr. Griffith is actually like an exotic plant enthusiast. So if anybody around here knows about them, he'd be the one to ask. And Nancy recognizes Mr. Griffith as Mr. Clark's business partner.
Right.
Apparently they're both involved with like aerial crop dusting.
It's a weird business. Okay.
So Nancy and Ted head to that place of business. Mr. Griffith has like this crop dusting plane that he is using currently when they arrive.
Well, no, it's someone else. Yeah.
Yeah, his employee is flying the plane, and that man's name is Mr. Marley. They go up and introduce themselves to Mr. Marley, and Ted is very, very interested in this plane. But Nancy tells Mr. Marley that she is just a botany student, and that's why they're here to talk to Mr. Griffin, just because she wants to know more about his rare plants. So he's like, yeah, go on to the greenhouse.
Inside the greenhouse, we, as the audience, see several arbensis plants, but Nancy and Ted do not see them. But meanwhile, Mr. Griffiths drives up. I guess he was like tipped off maybe by the guy at the nursery that Nancy was looking for an arbensis. So he comes into the greenhouse and confronts them for being there. And when Nancy asks him, he lies and says that he doesn't have any arbensis plants. But obviously we know that's not true. We just saw them. But Nancy hasn't seen them, and there's really nothing else they can do because he's basically kicking them out. But Nancy manages to pocket a seed catalog that she sees sitting nearby before she and Ted leave. And then this is where we're literally mystery solved. We see Mr. Griffith explain to Mr. Marley, who is there, that they must be looking for this arbensis plant because it was found growing above Mr. Clark's body. And he noticed that it was there when they found the body the other day, but he didn't think anyone would realize what it meant. But obviously Nancy has, so then he tells Marley to destroy all his arbensis plants. So, yeah, and so clearly we know, okay, well, so then Mr. Griffith must have buried Mr. Clark's body. So we know that he's the one who killed him, probably. And now he's destroying the evidence. But also, he quickly realizes, too, that Nancy has stolen this seed catalog, and so he sends Mr. Marley, I guess who is just kind of his lackey, to go track down Nancy and Ted. So Nancy and Ted are driving at this point, and they're looking through this seed catalog, and they do see that arbensis is a seed that this place sells in this catalog that Mr. Griffiths had. So Nancy plans to get in touch with them and see if Mr. Griffith or anyone else nearby has ordered any arbensis seeds from this distributor. So she and Ted go to the telegraph office and are waiting to get a response. And Mr. Marley is watching them from a nearby car. They finally do get a response from this company, and they say that they did ship an order of arbensis seeds to the Sylvan Lake Nursery 6 months ago.
Wait a minute.
That's weird, because the guy at the nursery said that they don't have that. So they head back to the nursery with Carson this time to confront the guy there, and he explains that he doesn't know anything about any arbensis seeds shipped there because he's new there. The business was just bought out like 2 weeks ago. And he's not even the owner. He just works for the owner. He was just recently hired. He does point out a box where there are like a bunch of old sales receipts and says that if there is any record of the Arbenza seeds being sold, they would be in there. But the current owner is away. And so he won't just let them look through the sales records without the owner's permission. And so they have to wait until he gets back, so they leave. However, unfortunately, Mr. Marley has followed them all the way here and has overheard all of this. So he and Mr. Griffith plan to fix this problem tonight while everyone is at the ice cream social.
Carson moves fast. Goodness, I know it's the 30s and things were different, but geez, it's been a day, sir.
Yeah.
So we go to the ice cream social that evening, and Nancy is upset because she sees Carson and Edna holding hands. It's like a little swinging bench situation. They're like sitting on these benches facing each other holding hands. And it actually, from far away, seems like Carson could even be proposing right now, just based on their body language. So we cut to Edna, and she's saying to Carson that she thinks that it's a marvelous idea. Presumably we're talking about the proposal, but she's like, but Nancy doesn't like me. And so how's that going to work?
Yeah.
And Carson's like, don't worry about that. I will talk to Nancy. And so he goes over to talk to Nancy about it. But then, like, as he's walking up to them, he overhears Nancy and Ted talking about Edna. But because they're behind this like trellis thing, Nancy doesn't see Carson approaching them. So Nancy is saying to Ted, she's like, if my dad decides to marry that awful woman, then I'm just going to run away. I'm going to run away and he's never going to see me again. And so Carson obviously is hurt by hearing this. And he goes back to Edna and is like, yeah, you're probably right. Nancy doesn't like you. But then we don't really have any time to discuss this further because someone comes running up and says, the nursery's on fire. Come quick, come quick. So pretty much the entire town is here at this party. So we all leave and we go over to the nursery. And of course, we're really concerned about the records burning in the fire. But this building is like really burning. Like it's going to be ashes in like minutes here. It's a big fire. But Ted, Mr. Hero of the moment, I guess, decides to run into the burning building to get this box of records and is struggling because it's a really big box. And Mr. Griffith sees this going down and sends Mr. Marley in, not himself. He sends Mr. Marley in after Ted. So Marley goes in after Ted and drags Ted out without the box. All of that was for nothing. The box still burns up anyway.
Yep.
So Nancy's devastated by this, but Carson tells her that he actually was able to get the bullet recovered from Mr. Clark's body, and he sent the bullet in for like analysis by a ballistic expert. So hopefully this means we have another lead and we won't need those receipts anyway. Nancy says that she's going to try to track down the gun itself, but Carson is like, no, how about the police do that for you, and you don't do that. And so Nancy and Ted head home, and at this point, Ted realizes that Marley may have not been trying to save him from the fire, as people thought. Maybe he was trying to stop him from getting the receipts, which obviously, because he does work for Mr. Griffin, so that would make sense. So Nancy decides she's going to pull off on a different road. She goes and she knocks on Apollo's door. She asks him about the ghosts he saw that night that Clark died, supposedly, and he explains that he saw the smaller ghosts disappear right into the ground up around Mr. Griffith's place. And Nancy's like, all right, get dressed real quick, even though she clearly woke him up in the middle of the night, but whatever. But she wants to go check out Mr. Griffith's place tonight, and I guess we need to bring Apollo with us.
I do want to talk about this scene a little bit more, though, because this scene is really, like, kind of concerning to me. So when they go to talk to Apollo, they, like, knock on his door, and he comes to the door at first, but Nancy and Ted appear kind of, like, frightened, and I think it's because he's wearing a white nightgown and a white sleeping cap that is
white
in
pointy
the
sleeping
shape
hat
of a point, like a KKK outfit. And of course, like, this was the 30s. Like, the KKK was very active, and I'm sure in this place where they were. And it's supposed to, it's just, this is so disturbing. Like, this is such a disturbing thought. That, like, okay, we're going to put the black character in a KKK outfit, and we're going to make the white children scared of him. What the hell? What?
And you can't even be like, oh, they think he's a ghost. No, there's no mistaking what he's wearing. I'm sorry.
Well, and also, like, it doesn't make any sense because, like, if they were knocking on the door of someone's, like, house, they would expect that person to be coming to the door. So,
of course,
they're not scared of that person coming to the door. They're scared because of what that person coming to the door looks like.
Mm-hmm.
And that looks like someone wearing a KKK getup.
Why would we do this to him?
I don't understand. I don't understand if this is supposed to be comedy. I don't understand what the intention with this is. I'm so offended. Like, this poor actor. Like,
yeah.
I mean, like, forget the movie. Like, forget what this is saying to, like, you know, other children who are watching this at the time or whatever. What about that actor who has to, in the 30s, put on a KKK outfit?
What were they thinking? The movie producers, the costume team, like, what?
Why? Truly don't know. I don't know. If anybody has any insight into this, I would really be interested to hear what you think this is supposed to be portraying. If I've misunderstood this somehow, if there's some kind of subtext I don't get, but it just seems awful on all levels and baffling in that, like, I don't know what you're trying to do with this, but it seems really horrible.
It's not even like one of those pointy hats that it's like it's flopped over.
No,
this is like fully structured a cone. Yeah.
Yes.
We're not Ebenezer Scrooge with our floppy hat and our night slippers. Like,
right.
Yeah. Anyway, we sneak into this barn.
Yeah.
Nancy sends Ted in first to confirm to Apollo that it's not actually haunted. And so Apollo explains that he saw the tall ghost the night of Clark's murder walking toward the barn. And then there were 2 explosions and then the shorter ghost disappeared. So Nancy thinks, okay, explosions, that's clearly the gunshots. And then the shorter ghost dropping to the ground was obviously Mr. Clark falling to the ground after being shot. Makes sense. But meanwhile, inside the barn, Ted accidentally gets a bucket of ashes dumped on him. And then when he comes out of the barn, he looks all like white-ish. Ghostly. And so he looks ghostly. And so this frightens Nancy and Apollo, who run away from him thinking that he's a ghost.
Ugh.
LOL.
So funny. So the next day, Ted pretends to be like a sheriff's deputy or something on the phone, and he calls Mr. Griffith and tells him that he and Mr. Marley need to come down to the sheriff's department right away. Unfortunately, Mr. Marley is up in the plane doing crop dusting or whatever, and so only Mr. Griffith can come. But they've done this so that they can use this time while they're away to sneak back into Mr. Griffith's barn to look for a second bullet, because Nancy figures that based on what Apollo saw, that there were 2 gunshots, and if one of them, the second one, hit Clark, then the first one has to be somewhere like maybe like embedded in the barn. So she wants to go find it. So they do that. They go to the barn while Mr. Griffiths is gone, and Ted ends up finding this bullet lodged in a post. And Nancy thinks that this proves that Clark was murdered here and then carried over to Uncle Matt's land and buried. So they start to look for this gun, thinking that maybe it's still in the barn somewhere. And after some shenanigans, they do find it, but unfortunately by this point Mr. Griffiths has realized that the sheriff did not call him, and so he comes back, and so he's like coming into the barn, and so they found this gun. It was like under a floorboard or something, and Ted throws it up into the air to like hide it so that they don't know that he doesn't know that they've found it, and it ends up getting like hooked on a nail on like the top beam of this barn. Like, how does this happen?
So lucky. I want to hide something. Let me throw it up in the air and hope for the best.
It wasn't even like he was throwing it up towards like a lofted area or anything like that. He just threw it straight up, and it just happened to land.
A rafter will catch it.
Like, what? Anyway, so Mr. Griffith gets into the barn and he holds Nancy and Ted at gunpoint because I guess he has a second gun. And he sees that the floorboard where the gun was hidden has been pulled up, and he tells them, hand over the gun that you just found. And they pretend to not know what he's talking about. And, but of course, Mr. Griffiths doesn't really believe them. And so he decides to lock them in the barn. And then he calls Mr. Marley, who I guess has a phone up in his plane.
A radio, right? It would have to be like a radio walkie-talkie situation.
I don't know. Whatever. And he tells Mr. Marley to arrange an accident for Ted and Nancy. Meanwhile, Ted and Nancy have gotten the gun back down somehow and are trying to break out of this barn. Luckily, though, before they left to come here, Ted had told Apollo that if they didn't come back by a certain time to tell Mrs. Gregory where they were. But Ted thinks that Apollo has forgotten because he thinks Apollo's stupid. And he thinks that they would have shown up by now. So Nancy decides to try to wave her red scarf out of a window to, I guess, attract attention from someone for like help. But all this does is cause a bull that's in like the paddock outside of the barn to charge at them. But luckily, this does break down the wall of the barn and they are able to escape afterwards. So cool, I guess. They managed to make it to the car and start driving out, but Mr. Marley lands his plane in front of them. And so they are trapped and then forced onto the plane at gunpoint by Mr. Griffith.
He forces them out of the car with the gun as well. Just drive over him. Don't get out of the car.
Mm-hmm. Crash into the plane.
That's better than what's about to happen to you because...
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they get forced into the plane by Marley, who takes them up in the air, and then as soon as they're at, like, cruising altitude or whatever, parachutes himself out of the plane. And Ted's like, where are you going? Come back. Come back. Like, what are you talking about? So now Ted and Nancy are just in this plane by themselves. Ted is able to like hop out of his seat and then like climb over into the pilot seat while the plane is like spinning like upside down and all that kind of stuff. But still, he's able to like pull them out of a nosedive while still like doing these crazy loops. It's a real, I would have thrown up and fallen out of the plane 6 times already.
Well, you can see them physically struggling with this, like from the G-force or whatever that they're experiencing. Like Nancy's like, like they look like they're going to be sick.
Well, and Ted looks like he's about to pass out. Like he's clinging to consciousness. And Nancy's like, pull this up. And he's like,
which way is up? Which way is up?
He's like, I don't know which way to go. And then finally he's able to just like move his arms to pull them back. And that's fine. But like, geez. But at this same moment, Edna has been made aware of them being missing. And so she goes to get Carson and the sheriff. But when they get to the sheriff's office, Mr. Griffith and Mr. Marley come in and they're like, oh, Carson, I'm so sorry to tell you, but your crazy daughter stole my plane and she's dead. She crashed it. But then they hear the plane outside. So they go out to see, but then like all have to like get down on the ground because Ted is flying so low that he like almost crashes into them. But then obviously it's like very clear that Marley and Griffith are lying. So the sheriff locks them up while Carson and Edna and everybody else run after Ted and Nancy. Ted is able to like sort of land the plane. It's
crash landed.
Crash lands. It like bumps and then tips it over into like a haystack in a field. So the plane's like upside down and they're kind of bloody, but they're fine. Ted is like clinging to consciousness still, but they find him and then Nancy's like inside the haystack. And so Carson has to like dig her out, but she is fine as well. And then they both faint from the stress of this ordeal, which same, I would have been unconscious a long, long time ago. But anyway, we hear from the sheriff that we've discovered that Clark actually found out that Marley and Griffith were robbing him in their business or whatever. So embezzling maybe somehow was involved. And he was actually planning to turn them in for this. And that's when Griffith shot him. And also we see that Ted has finished his boat. We have a nice little scene at the end of the movie where he shows everyone his completed boat, which he has named the Nancy. And then he asks Nancy to christen it for him with a champagne bottle. And then I don't know how anyone doesn't notice this, but when she cracks the champagne bottle on the boat, it rips a sizable hole in the side of it because he has not built this boat very well.
What did he make this boat? boat out of? Cardboard?
It's like he made the bottom out of wood and then just kind of wrapped the sides of it in like paper mache almost. And then, of course, the champagne bottle busts through that, but they still put it in the water anyway with the hole in the side. Nobody says anything like, hey, should we patch that hole up real quick before we push this in the water? But they do. They push it off into the water, and Nancy's waving to Carson from the shore, and it's just Nancy and Ted in the boat. And then the water starts to come flooding in, and the boat starts to sink. So Nancy and Ted just have to swim back to shore. And LOL, the end of the movie.
Yeah.
I really like the
Cool.
ending. That ending is very exciting, to be fair.
The plane flying is fun.
Very
I will say
memorable.
the boat is fun and funny too.
Of course.
It just doesn't feel like a mystery. It doesn't feel like Nancy's investigating anything.
No.
It doesn't feel like Nancy and the relationship that she has with Ned or Ted or whatever. It doesn't feel like Nancy and the relationship she has with Carson.
No.
Like, none of it feels familiar. Some of it, I guess you could classify as being funny, but most of it were racist jokes, in my opinion. And I was just more mad about the whole thing than I could enjoy it.
And we don't get any resolution with the Nancy Carson drama.
No.
We have the fourth movie and Edna's just not in it.
Right.
So we assume that he's left her in Sylvan Lake and gone back to River Heights.
Yeah.
End of story.
Yeah. I mean, presumably the resolution is him deciding that she's right and they shouldn't get married because Nancy doesn't like her.
Yeah. But Nancy even like hugs, like, because
Edna at the end. Yeah.
She's like, oh, Miss whatever, I'm so happy to see you after my harrowing plane crash issue. But
she's
like,
upset. Yeah.
But it's not like, now that everybody's good with each other, we can actually talk about this. No, we don't address it ever again.
Right. It's honestly like the whole of it is like Carson being an a-hole, Nancy being a brat, Ted being the only good character who does anything worthwhile, Apollo getting crapped on. So it's just like a movie where like a bunch of mean people are doing mean things and nothing happens. except for the plane. That's it. That's like the only exciting thing.
Yeah. And the whole plant thing that takes up such a large portion of the story, it's all luck. Just Nancy happens to see a flower that she happens to recognize because she happened to be at a flower show prior to this. And it's a special interest of hers.
They wouldn't, I mean, like, presumably, there's the bullet or whatever, but they wouldn't have even really been investigating Mr. Griffiths if they didn't already know that he collected rare flowers and, like.
So all this is it comes back to a criminal being dumb because he's the only guy in town with these seeds. He had to have the seeds on him when he was doing the burying of the body. And just that little blip and mistake was what?
Yep. Well, also like incompetent, I guess, police work as well, because I don't know. It does seem kind of obvious that you would potentially investigate a business partner in the event of someone's murder and maybe look into their finances a little bit. And if they had done that, then maybe they would have found that Marley and Griffiths were stealing and that was a motive, and then maybe found the gun in the barn, that way. But of course that doesn't happen because the sheriff is portrayed as being stupid. So
the sheriff doesn't even know that you need a body in order to prove that there's been a murder.
Yeah.
He doesn't even know that Matt has a right to his lawyer.
So sometimes you don't have to have a body to prove a murder, but you have to be able to prove that a murder has been committed. So usually there has to be like a large amount of like physical evidence, like blood, that someone couldn't have survived to indicate that. But like, in this case,
there wasn't.
There's nothing. Someone's just missing, like,
for a month. Yeah.
So I do think we need to talk about, since we were talking about this right now, we're talking about the sheriff. We need to talk about the insane sexual tension that there is between the sheriff and Matt.
Oh my gosh.
I don't know if this is just me reading into it or whatever, but he gets so close to Matt's face all the time.
He does. Yeah.
And he has this obsession with like locking him up and like like proving something. And then at the end where he's talking about the resolution and he's like apologizing to Matt for like going after him so hard, he like pats his leg in a way where it's like, I can tell you want to do more right now, my guy. Like
Oh, that's the new headcanon. I love it. Oh.
Yeah, honestly,
funny.
that made me the only part that I really enjoyed.
Yeah. Matt's so casual with the cop too. He's not like mad that he's been locked up.
Right.
Whatever, Sheriff. I'll see you when I see you. Come back when you have a body and we'll talk then.
Oh my god. Okay, something else I want to talk about is the Nancy clumsiness in this movie, but particularly Nancy's driving skills. She is constantly getting into accidents, like actual accidents, running into things. Like she hits the bumper into so many things, like a fence, other cars, to the point where it's like a full-on like trope in the movie. It's like a plot line. There's a point where she is driving and she almost gets into like a full-on head-on collision if Ted didn't like swerve the steering wheel so that they moved out of the way. And is this sexism? Is that what this is? Just portraying her as being a bad driver?
Because that's not from the books. She's always a very capable driver in the books.
And I know it's supposed to be funny, and I do think it is a little bit funny. But yes, very, very out of character. But also, like, why is it funny? Like, is it just funny because she's a girl and doesn't know how to drive? Like, what's funny about it? You know what I mean? Like,
it almost seems like they're trying to make her intentionally careless, which is even further away from her character. Because at the very beginning, when she first comes home from the flower show, we see her like intentionally bump her bumper into Carson's bumper as she's parking in front of the house. Like she does, like it's a habit for her. She's like she doesn't even care to plan to stop the car when she arrives home. It's like Carson's car will slow me down. That's how that'll be how I stop. I don't need the brakes. What?
Generously, I could say that maybe they're doing this because of how frequently Nancy experiences like kind of car troubles throughout the original text versions. And like maybe, you know, they're attributing that to like her carelessness instead of her being involved in serious situations and mysteries where like, you know, she has car trouble or runs into storms or whatever. And also maybe slightly because Carson just replaces her car so frequently that maybe that's the reason why. So like if you took it that far, I could see that. But also it just feels kind of like, another mischaracterization of Nancy and possibly a sexist read of like, oh, women drivers, you know, like cool.
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, most of my comments are just about the racism. Like, just all these little moments where we laugh at Apollo or, you know, make fun of Apollo. All of these microaggressions, which, like, are so extreme that, like, I don't even know if you can really classify them as microaggressions because they're so overt.
They're just aggressions.
It doesn't feel micro. So
this is just racism. It's just really, plain old-fashioned racism.
Like, there's just really no other way to read it. Like, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Something else I want to talk about. One other note I made, and this is so random and aside. There is one point where Ted is wearing a really weird sweater. Did you notice this?
I feel like he's worn this in another of the movies that we've covered.
Is that a thing? Okay. I was like, I rewound it. I watched it back. I was like, what the heck are you wearing, Ted? It's like this sweater. It's a full-on sweater. It's not a shirt, like sweater that people have written their names on. You can see even one spot Nancy's written her name. It says Nancy Drew.
I think these are just all his lake friends.
Yeah, and there's a sailboat on it. And so I'm like, okay, is there like some kind of like sailing club? Is this like a summer, like a summer thing, like maybe like a competition kind of a thing where everyone like signs each other's like t-shirts, you know, like they sign each other's yearbooks kind of a thing. We used to do similar things.
I was going to say, we did this in middle school.
Shirt, and we sign each other's shirts.
That's what it reminds me of. I feel like it really is just like he and his family come to Sylvan Lake every summer. And so just all of his like summer camp friends sign it. Not summer camp. He's not at summer camp, but just like all of his friends from the lake.
It's just so interesting that like he's just wearing it and there's no like explanation of it. They don't mention it. And so it's like, I guess, was this a common thing to do in the 30s too? Like, is that really how long, like, we've been doing things like that? Like, that it was just no one would question it if they saw it?
Which is
'Cause
kind of
that's kinda
touching
crazy.
almost,
Yes,
right?
right? It's like, wow, humans are so funny and so cool
Yeah.
that, like, we do the same things for, like, hundreds of years, I
Mhm.
guess.
Oh, and we
Like,
definited thought we invented it back when we were
oh,
12, you know, like,
absolutely, we did.
I'm
We're
gonna
like,
have a
we're so
pink marker.
alternative.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not writing on paper. I'm writing on a shirt. It's like,
Mhm.
oh no, actually, they've been doing this since the 30s at
Yeah.
least. Oh man.
Yeah, no, I think that it's really just as simple as that. It's kind of silly looking because they don't
Yeah.
address it or explain it at all, but maybe it
Mhm.
really is just like everybody knows what this is. Why would
Yeah.
we, you know? It just makes him look like he has more friends, maybe.
Maybe.
That he's a busy guy. He's got a
Yeah.
packed social schedule. That's why he's so annoyed at Nancy that she's taking up all his time when he could be boating with his buddies.
Okay, let's talk about this a little bit more, though. Let's talk about Ted and Nancy, because so the whole time it's very obvious that he is like annoyed with Nancy showing up, annoyed with like how she acts and like what she wants to do. She makes him pay for stuff.
Mhm.
She does again in this movie. She like, makes him pay for the telegram or whatever, and like he's just annoyed and put upon, and she kind of like basically uses him for all that he's worth. Essentially.
Mhm.
And it's I'm just struggling. I understand how this is kind of funny in that like she is kind of running circles around him and he is being dragged along.
Mhm.
But I'm unclear about what we're supposed to pick up from this because he names his boat Nancy at the end of it.
Yeah.
So that makes me think, well, okay, he must really like her or regard her, or else he wouldn't have named his boat Nancy.
Mhm.
But yet he acts throughout the whole time like he hates every part of her.
Yeah. Feels very middle school-y.
It
You know?
does. Like he is, saying that he doesn't want to do all these things, but actually he does enjoy it and likes
Mhm.
Nancy's attention. He's also portrayed as being like a little bit older than her.
Mhm.
I think just by like a year maybe or two, but like enough to where like he doesn't want to, I guess, hang out with her, or like that's implied by maybe Carson or Nancy at the
Mhm.
beginning. They say something about like, or Nancy says something about him being annoyed and thinking that she's followed him up there.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, it's kind of like she's like puppy love pursuing him and he's humoring her.
Right.
Except he really does like her.
When he's not thirsting after Edna and following her around like a
Right.
sick puppy.
It's a very convoluted. It doesn't make a whole lot of sense.
And we're supposed to believe they kissed earlier in this movie?
I guess so.
I'm glad they cut that, honestly. It's
Yeah,
not
it doesn't make
believable for
sense.
their dynamic.
As much as I would like to see a Frankie and Bonita kiss, because again, I think they have great chemistry and are great actors, it does not make sense in the world of this movie. And yeah, I think it's just, again, it's one of those things where it's like, if they're mean to you, it means they like you. Like, when it's just like, can we please move past that sexist, like heteronormative, men hate women kind of a expectation.
The only way I can see the kiss working is if maybe Nancy got fed up with him being so interested in Edna and called him out on it. And he was like, oh, actually, I will admit I do have feelings for you. And then they kiss. And then that's why he's a little bit softer to her at the ending, maybe. That he's finally admitted.
That could make sense. That could work.
But then in the next movie, he's flirting with some other random girl anyway.
Of course.
And she gets mad at him over it, if you remember that part. But like, Nancy, you can do better. Is this really the only boy around?
It just seems like neither of them enjoy it. Neither of them appreciate it.
Maybe that's just by nature being 16, but
maybe.
Who knows?
Maybe.
Oh.
Yeah. Well. Okay. Anything else we want to say about Troubleshooter?
I think that's all I've got. How about you?
No, that's it. That's all I've got.
Flashlight score?
Oh, God. I gotta be honest. I gotta give this one a 1.
Yeah.
I hated it. I I don't find very much redeemable about this. It doesn't feel like a Nancy Drew mystery. There is no mystery.
Yeah.
It wasn't that funny to me. Like, I'd rather watch anything else.
I'm trying to remember why I liked it as much as I did the first time, because I do remember liking this one, because this is only the second time I've seen it. This and when I watched it for our adaptations episode.
Right.
I remember liking it more than the other three at the time, but I don't remember why now. Maybe just because the ending was as exciting as it was.
Yeah, that could be.
Maybe that's all it was, but
yeah. I mean, I think Bonita and Frankie do a lot. They do a lot to hold up these movies. They're very good, and I can tell why they wanted to make movies with them. But I just, ugh.
Yeah, Bonita was a great Nancy, but I think I'll give it a 2.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Wow, I know that our next one is going to be higher than this anyway.
Oh, yes, I'm so excited. I've already started reading it.
Yes. I have not yet, but I'm very excited nonetheless.
Yeah. But so we are going to be transitioning into an entirely new topic, Regular Drews, and I am so excited because we are going to be circling back to the Nancy Drew Diaries.
Oldest to newest now.
Oldest to newest. So we get to see from Nancy's very inception to what she is in modern day. So I'm so excited to revisit those. You guys know I love the diaries. And I know there's lots of like criticism of the diaries from like people who are big fans of like the original mystery stories, but I don't get it.
Yeah.
I don't get it.
They're just pure fun. They're
so
different,
good.
obviously.
They're different.
There's a lot of differences, but they're still great.
I feel like they correct all of the issues that I have with the original mystery stories. And so I could not be more excited to read them and talk about it. So, so first up, we have our patrons have voted on The Phantom of Nantucket, which is, I think, number 7. Yeah, number 7, Phantom of Nantucket. So it is a very late summer mystery. And so it is really perfectly timed. Nancy goes to Nantucket. So... Yeah.
That's what it was. This movie felt very summery. I forgot to say that, but it did feel like after we just did Bungalow Mystery, which is very, very summery in nature, this felt like a good follow-up just with the summer theme. And so I like that we'll be continuing that a little bit. So it'll be nice. Yeah.
Very exciting.
Perfect.
Yeah. So that is coming up next, Regular Drews, and we will see you then.
Yep, we'll see you then.
Thank you for listening to Regular Nancy Drew. If you like this episode, make sure to rate, review, and subscribe.
Email us at regularnancydrew@gmail.com.
You can also visit our website, regularnancydrew.com, and also follow us on Instagram at regularnancydrew.
You can also support us on Patreon. Patrons at the $3 level vote on upcoming episode topics and get exclusive access to our Scoop Sesh series.
And all patrons receive early access to each episode as well as weekly bonus content.
And to all you regular Drews out there, thanks for listening.